So again, thank you all for joining. If you've sat in for long enough, you probably understand that today we're going to be covering eSPACE, work order, and asset management. I'm very excited to share this with you all today, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see if it lets me. And if you all were at our last webinar we had, on the pro tips that you could do within eSPACE, or the features you did not know eSPACE could do. We just had a great turnout and a lot of great feedback. So we want to be able to do more of this to be able to help you all get the most out of our system. If you are using it, we want to be able to encourage you to use it to the fullest capacity that you can, get the most out of it. If you're not using it, we like to introduce you to a new system and new methods that you may be able to utilize for your church for intentional facility stewardship. And if you've ever heard of Tim Cool, he is my father. He nails the head on facility stewardship with his book Entrusted. Really awesome resource to check out. I highly encourage it. One of the things I also shared in the last call that I think was very helpful for people, I understand being a church facility steward, you feel like you can be in a silo at times, and there may not feel like there's a lot of resources out there to learn. So I really want to encourage you all to learn. And one of the great resources we have is our Facebook group, CFMS. I'm going to pull up a link here for you guys just to show you. It is a group of facility stewards of about 1,000 or 1,100 members, just to show you a few things that this covers. You know, you can come and ask any questions that you have. And this Bentley, that's you. Look at that. And there's some awesome people in here that are happy to answer questions. It's a really great community. I highly encourage you joining. If you have anybody else on your team, this is just a really powerful resource to utilize and come together as a community. So I do highly encourage you all do this. I'm going to go ahead and try and throw this in the chat here before I forget, just so you have that. I'm still trying to figure all this out now, all this new stuff. So I apologize. This is my first time really. Chris, you're reading your copy this week. I love it. This is my first time doing Zoom webinars, so I hope you all are patient with me as I go through this today. But again, we're going to get the most out of this. So isn't Zoom awesome, by the way? I love Zoom. It's really helped in this crazy world we live in today. But let's go ahead and get started, everybody. So again, thank you for dealing with my introductory speech, and I hope you do join that Facebook group. It really is an awesome resource. But we're going to cover 4 main things today. The 4 main pillars of eSPACE, work order, and asset management. Pillar 1, the work orders. So your find it, fix it things, spill on aisle 12, can you help me change this light bulb? Typically the things, if you're a facility manager, what people grab you by the collar and ask you to do when you're going to the water cooler or going to the bathroom. And then you have 30 requests that people told you by the time you sit back down. If anybody can give me an amen. So we're going to cover work orders and how to track those, how to manage them, and how to intentionally gather and track these things, not only for just the ease of use and staying organized, but also for reporting later down in the road. I think a huge piece that people miss in tracking work orders is the fact that you can report on certain things and you can gather some really great info. So I do highly encourage you to think about that as we go through this as well, not just the short term, what do we see at face value, but also the long term effects of tracking this data and tracking it accurately. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is going to be preventative maintenance. So what are the recurring things that we need to do? Is it our weekly cleaning checklist? Is it landscaping every 2 weeks? Is it changing the filters every 3 months? Is it our annual inspections? What do we need to do that is recurring, and how do we track that? We're going to cover that a little bit today, as well as the equipment or asset tracking piece. So this is very big also. I also love the ability that it ties in with work orders. So I can associate work with an asset, say a rooftop unit, for instance. So I can run that report at the end of the year and say, how many times did I work on this rooftop unit? What were the results of those things? What piece of that work was scheduled maintenance that was preventative maintenance for us, and what was find it, fix it stuff? And how can we see the difference? How much are we spending on these things? We're going to talk about that. I'll also touch briefly on the life cycle calculator, where you can further manage your assets. This is a totally free tool, by the way, I'll talk about. That's how you can track the remaining useful life, depreciation, a summary of what you need to save at the end of the year for your capital reserve account per capital group. So we're going to touch on that a little bit as well. And then the last piece of it is going to be our inventory. And if you joined me on this last webinar we had, I talked a little bit about one of the pro tips I like to use for inventory, where I tie it in my work order and I never have to look at a piece of paper and keep track of inventory. And my finance people and my facility people both win when we do it that way. I'll touch on some of those things as well. So those are my 4 pillars. Those are the 4 high-level things we're going to cover today. So I'm going to start with work orders. And before I go into work orders, I want to ask you all, if you are using eSPACE and if you are not, if somebody has a problem at the facility, let it be a facility staff or anybody else on staff, how do they get the request to you? Go ahead and tell me in the chat box if you may. I would love to review those things. I'd love to see how they get those requests to you. Do they pull on your collar? Do they text it to you? Do they call you when they have a problem? Are they shooting you an email? How does that look at your church? And what's typical for you guys? Do they go on a form on your website? What does that look like to you all? Let's see if we can get some responses in here and see if we have any sort of common denominators. Got the chat bot coming a little bit. Email and they grab me. Email verbally, form on the internet, fill out a form, email, call me, catch me in the hall. That's very typical for what a lot of people see. So I love that. Catch in the hall, Mark. Mark, good to hear from you. All of those things are exactly what I hear pretty commonly. I think we have a few more. I'm just going to read these also real quick. Everything, enter it through eSPACE. Pam, thank you. Kim, awesome. Kim, I understand. So we will definitely talk about those things today. So when you get a work order or facility management software, one of the most annoying things in my experience is now we have this great new software. We're going to track everything. Everything's going to be prioritized. But now we have to jump through all these hoops to submit a work order. We're going to have to log into a system. We're going to have to fill out a form. Our admins are going to have to make us a login. We have to jump through all these hoops. And we just don't want you to do that. Well, you still can. People can still log into the system and add work orders this way. It's very easy to do and it's, pretty straightforward, but it requires a login, which your facility staff will be in here. They're going to live in this system. They're going to be in here all the time. They're going to have it on their phone, their iPad. They're going to be in and out through this thing. But what about your front desk person? What about your communications director if they see a problem? We want to be able to track those things the best we can and get it into the system as easy as possible so we can manage it appropriately. The last thing we want to do is make it difficult where people do have to pull us aside because they don't want to jump through those hoops and they just want to tell us because they're our buddy. But at the end of the day, we need to track it. So I have a couple methods I like to use for tracking these things. Method number 1 is the form. I know that was a very popular one. A lot of people were shooting out there, but we do have a work order request form, and this is a public form. So you don't need a login to access this. Anybody can do it. There's 2 ways, or the way I like to use this, one of 2 ways. I can embed it on my website, embed it on a landing page. Wherever I know my people are going to see it, I'll do it there. The other thing I've seen really popular that facility managers do is they'll leave a link in their signature of their email or a button that they'll have the link embedded to, and it'll say to click on or to create a work order, click here. And they click on it and it takes them to this form where they can then request their work order. So it's just in the signature of their email, but anybody who has this URL could fill out a work order. So the same form we just saw, except you do not need a login. So very easy. If I'm on my phone, I can attach a picture to it, take a photo, add it to it, do all that good stuff, and off the races we go. So number 1 is form. Number 2 is my favorite, and a lot of people caught on to this in the last webinar we had, and this is a really, really, really powerful way to make it as easy as possible, no excuses whatsoever to get a work order in the system. So we can generate an email for you that your IT team could forward to be anything you want it to be. So it could be facilities@yourchurch.com, maintenance@yourchurch.com, whatever you want that to be, it could be forwarded to as long as it's your domain, right? So what we can do now is we can choose what service category and which location maps to that. So we can have a different email for each different location we have if we want. I can have a different email for facility requests and another for IT requests. We'll touch on that a little bit later. I know you're like, I'm a facility manager. I don't care about IT. IT could also use this for IT ticketing, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But let's take a step back here. Let's say somebody has your email, maintenance@yourchurch.com, and they're going to either text or email you a request. And I'm going to show you what the text version looks like. Because as you see, I'm a young millennial. I like to be on my phone, says the stereotype. So we'll be able to show you that kind of version here. So, and by the way, our knowledge base is really awesome. I do like it a lot. Where I can go and I could type in, you just saw me type in text to work order. It's going to show me step by step how it works. You know, you could really search for a lot of items in here and find it. If I type in equipment, I'll have a dozen articles come up about equipment and the things I could do with it. If I want to learn more about service categories, routing rules, all these things, the knowledge base is a very powerful resource. Definitely underrated in my opinion. But let's look at the public work order request through text. So what we do is we put that email in here, facilities@yourchurch.com, maintenance@yourchurch.com. Again, whatever you'd like that to be. People can then take a picture of the problem, add a description, press send, boom, the second they press send, it's automatically going to my facility manager's dashboard. So he can prioritize it as he sees fit, he can manage it, and he can appropriately assign it to either himself, put it in his queue, or somebody else on his team. And let that person know they can get the work done. And we'll talk a little bit more about who we can assign it to and how the management portion of it looks like in a second. Right now, I really just want to hit on how do we get it in the system in the first place. Because you could also may need to assign it to an external vendor. Maybe it's an HVAC problem. We need to give it to an external vendor. We're going to cover all of those methods in just a little bit here. I really like this approach because whoever requested it, let it be by text or email, the system is going to be smart enough to remember their information, and it's going to update them as that progresses. So whenever the work order is created and we got it in the system, they're going to get a receipt letting them know. If it is approved and we got it off to one of our guys or ourselves to get the work done, they're going to get another notification. And then if we complete the work, they're going to be notified along the entire way. So it really eliminates the point of manual follow-up, which I really, really enjoy this. And it's keeping everybody in loop. So as the status changes in eSPACE, the status typically changes through text or email to the end user as well. Awesome. So now we know how to get it in the system. Now, what do we do when they're here? So we have a few things we could do. So I know we have our guys that aren't very technology savvy that like facilities, and that's totally okay. We don't need to be as tech savvy as we want to use the system, because when I have a work order submitted, it shoots me an email. If you can use your email, that's great too. Ideally, you have the app on your phone and you can check that sometimes. Maybe they don't even have a smartphone. I think it's still really easy to manage if you're on your computer ever. If not, I see the difficulty. So there's a few options we have. If you do have anyone tech savvy, you can print it out for them. So that's the first thing we could do with the work order. We can print it out. We give you this good looking slip here. You can write all over this. This is as old school as it gets. I know people that love working on this slip. Now, I caution you, what I said in the beginning about tracking these things and making sure they are in a system, not just to satisfy us for the short term, but we need to think long term here. How can we report on this data? How can we gather conclusions from this data that's going to help us moving forward? You know, again, being faithful stewards of what everything we've been entrusted with, data really, really helps with that. So how can we do this? So we can write it up. We can give it to John, who's been the facility manager for 30 years here, and have him knock everything out. But then I really challenge you and want somebody to get this data back in the system some way. Now, by doing that, you are double entering data at some point because somebody has to write it, then somebody else needs to enter it in the system. I understand that, but I just think it's so important to track it. And if printing it out is the way that works for you and your culture, keep doing it, but just try and track it. So that would be my advice to you. So John could go through here. He can check off the tasks as he goes. He could leave some notes and comments that we could relay later. Maybe he needs to work on a piece of equipment he wants to track here. Again, so we have that information. All that is super, super helpful. So method number one, when the work order is in here, we can print it. Method number two is we can assign it virtually, and this is my preference. So we have a few things we could do with the assignments. I can assign it to an internal user. I'm going to assign it. Luke Luttrell, is anybody here from Fellowship? I love Luke. I know he had some people here last time, but I can assign this to Luke because I'll say, hey, you know what? This is right in Luke's wheelhouse. He's a rock star with this stuff. He's great at this kind of work. We're just going to give it right to him. Maybe I really don't care who gets it done. I'm just going to hand it off to our housekeeping department and let them take care of it, facility services, however you have your department set up. I'm just going to give it to a group of people and let them decide. Maybe it is something outsourced like we discussed, like HVAC, electrical, plumbing. We can then assign it to an external vendor. So we'll give it to not a real vendor because that's a really relevant example there. Or Home Depot will come do the work for us. We'll give it to them. Why not? No, but in reality, what's really cool is if you have your vendors, I'm going to settings, basic, external vendors here. If you have the primary contact information for your vendor, it will email them when you have a request. So whoever my primary contact test@ohiochurch.com is for fire station 204, it will actually notify them that work is on their plate, and they can manage and respond to that request through email as well. The best external vendors, in my opinion, actually use an external vendor portal in eSPACE. We don't charge you per user, so why not? And it is actually really cool. I've seen some vendors that'll actually go in, attach their invoices to the work order for the church. They'll actually knock out the task, the cost of everything they did, so the church can report on it later. And that is an awesome vendor. I know you're not going to have that all the time, so it's always great to relay that information in the work order for them after they give you the invoice or whatever it may be. However, I've seen some really awesome vendors do it. So maybe have that conversation with your vendor too, because reality is the system is really easy to use, especially when you're using an external vendor portal. It's just showing them their stuff. It's very straightforward. All right. And last thing we could do, this is going to be some of my facility managers' favorite thing too. We can reject it. So we'll let them know why we're not going to get the work done for them. So maybe it's a silly request. It's out of the scope of what we typically do. Maybe it's a duplicate. Maybe we're already working on it. Whatever it may be, we can let them know right here. Another pro tip is if the work is not submitted in the way you need it, and I'll touch on something like this later, but let me give you an example. Like somebody's using the text to work order feature, and maybe your organization requires to know everybody's name who submits the work order, and you make sure they submit that. If they don't include their name, we'll let them know, please submit again and include your name. You could do that. I also have people, and I'm sure this never happens at your church, that'll text in. I use this example a lot, but it's so painfully relatable that somebody will take a picture of something like a light bulb, and they won't tell you where it is. They won't tell you what's wrong. They'll just give you a picture of a light bulb and say, go get him, Tiger. I'll let them know, hey, you need to give me more information on this light bulb. And it's going to go right back to their phone. They could text it in again if they want, or I can create a conversation with them and gather that information if I want to be the nice guy. But I'll show you those options here in a second. But this is the last thing we could do to the work order on our dashboard is we can just reject it. So now I have you in suspense. Let's look in a work order and let's get some more details here. So I'm going to start with the details and we're going to work our way across these tabs here. So one of the first things I want to hit on is, does anybody remember my external vendor list? How I had like maybe 10 to 15 different vendors? Why do I only have 2 show up here? That's a great question. And my pros at eSPACE are going to know this like the back of their hand, but everything in our system will flow from service category. This is very, very important, down to who I assign it to, what assets can be tied to this. Everything flows from that service category. So as we see here, I have an equipment for the Pro Team backpack. I can only assign it to these 2 vendors. Now maybe let's change this to an IT request. Let's see what happens. Let's get crazy. So now when I change that, I have IT equipment I could select from. This isn't my Pro backpack anymore. This is a printer and scanner. So it's an IT related asset. And then I have a different vendor I can assign it to who I specified can do IT work. So what this does is I can assign who can do what kind of work, not only based on service category, but this will also go much deeper. What kind of equipment can we use? What user-defined fields are set up for that equipment? All of those things we'll be able to review and see a little deeper in just a little bit. But highlight, star, underline twice, big circle around, everything will flow from service category in the system. But that's also very great because I can now have different departments like my IT and facilities. I have my facility admin, my IT admin. They're never crossing a line over each other unless I want them to. So my facility guy is never going to see an IT request. My IT guy is never going to see a facility request. They both are admins in their different departments and they never intersect with each other. I also like it because maybe you have certain facility technicians that only perform certain types of work. And you could also use it for your vendors, so you never accidentally assign a plumbing request to your HVAC guy. You could set all of these things up to make it easier on yourself as well. Next, we jump to spaces. So what room is this taking place in? This is going to be in the kitchen. So we have our kitchen selected here. Again, I like to add the space here too, just so I could report on it later. How many times did we work in the kitchen last year? How long did each task take? How many times did we work in the sanctuary last year? And that may go a little above and beyond what you all want to hear, but I think that is important. And that's also why I like to have a piece of equipment or asset tied to it if I can, because that way I could run a report later and say, how many times did we work on this asset? How many times do we work on this equipment? And it's going to really help me get some data there. Next, we're going to jump to cost. A few things we'll touch on here. So we can add our equipment or asset related costs. We can add our inventory or our inventory costs, something miscellaneous, or labor and time. You know, maybe we have a part-time person that is paid by the hour, maybe it's an external vendor, whatever it is. Tracking the cost here is very, very important because, again, I can't stress enough, the reporting, what we can gather from this down the road is going to be so, so helpful. I love the idea of using inventory here. So I'm going to go in and let's say we are changing a light bulb. The person let us know what room it's in, what's wrong with it. We figured out it's in the kitchen and we need to change the light bulb. So we'll go ahead and grab a light bulb here. And we'll do one. And boom, that total cost just went from $0 to $10 without me doing a thing except adding one light bulb here. That is because in the inventory section, I've indicated this light bulb cost me 10 bucks. So whenever I add it here, not only does it add the cost, but what's really cool is when my technician finishes the work and closes out this work order, it's going to remove one light bulb from my inventory on hand, as it should, right? But here's where it gets really cool is you can have a reorder threshold set up for each item. So I could say my reorder threshold is 12 on the light bulbs. So whenever I get below 12 light bulbs, the system will automatically shoot me a reminder and let me know it's time to order more light bulbs. So I bet you didn't know it could do that. That is a really awesome tool that I like in here. I'll show you how that works a little bit later. If somebody's able to remind me in the questions, I'll go in that in much more detail to show you all how exactly you can set that up if you have not already. Then we have tasks. I like this as well. I use this two ways. Method number one, we have our cleaning checklist here. I can just give this to somebody, say, go get them, Tiger. They can go on their phone or iPad, just knock them out as they go, check, 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 get it all done. When they check everything off, the work is completed, waiting to be approved. What I'll also do is, let's say we have a preventative maintenance like our landscaping every 2 weeks. I can have one work order for landscaping, but then there's multiple tasks that consist within that work order. So we're going to have to cut the grass, we're going to have to kill the weeds, seed and fertilize, trim the hedges, edge the yard, all that good stuff, right? But what I can do with that is I could still do that same thing with the cleaning checklist, give it to somebody, let them go check, 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 knock it out. But what I like to do with that is I can assign those individual tasks to different people. So we still, again, one work order for landscaping, but I'm going to say Billy is going to cut the grass. Jilly Joe is going to seed and fertilize. Steve McGee is going to edge the yard. And aren't those awesome names? But now I still have one work order for landscaping, but I've designated individual tasks to each person to tackle. And when everybody knocks out their task, the work order is then moved on to that status where it's time to be approved by the admin. So I really like that piece of it too. Another pro tip I just want to cover really quick, adding tasks from the library. Did you all know we have task groups? So task groups is rather than me coming in and typing all 4 of these every time we have to clean the kitchen, if it isn't preventative maintenance will automatically populate the tasks every time once you make them. But you could also have task groups. So maybe I'm just used to having a work order for fleet maintenance and it's not preventative maintenance for whatever reason, but maybe I want to just press one button and it creates a bunch of tasks for me. That's exactly what task group does. So I can save a task group and just add it here, and it's going to add a bunch of work orders with one click. Task groups are going to be in the advanced settings right over here, just in case you haven't played around with that before. Highly recommend you do so. None show up for me here because I don't have any tied to the service category. Again, everything in the system will flow from service category. That's where some people get very confused. Just remember, service category is king in the system. Then we move on to conversations. So we can have a lot of fun here. So we can create conversations with our boss, with anybody else assigned to the work order, anybody else on our team really that we want to communicate with. What I like about this is, let's say I'm going to start a conversation with, I can't think of anybody I want to pick on. I'm just going to start a conversation with Jack. And I'm going to say, hey, Jack, is it okay if I do it this way? I hope I'm not stepping on your toes. Do you have any other thoughts around this? Is this good with you? And when I create this conversation with Jack, he can get an email, or he will get an email, and he'll see exactly what work order it's tied to. He can respond right there from his email without having to log in anywhere. And it's going to notify me. It's also going to be added to eSPACE, but it keeps track of this whole conversation in eSPACE, which is really, really awesome. So that way, 2 years later down the road, if I need to figure out why did we do it that way, what were we thinking, for whatever reason, I can then pull up that work order and see exactly what we were talking about in the conversations, and I have that log even if the conversation was closed out. Another thing I really like about it, and I'm hoping, oh no, okay, I think I can show you here. One of the things I really like, I wanted to show you when somebody texts in a work order, but this was not the case, where the system again remembers who that public requester is. Let it be they texted it in, they did it through a form, they did it through an email, whatever it is, it remembers that public requester here. So if I need to gather more information, just like I was referring to earlier about, where was that light bulb, I can come at it here and say, where is that light bulb that you took a picture of that you didn't tell me where it is? And then what happens is that person would get a text or email depending on how they submitted it, and they could then respond again right there from their phone, right there from their email address, and it notifies me all in the same way. So not just for internal use, but it's also great to communicate with the requester. So I really like that piece of it too. Let me go back in my fancy work order here, my kitchen cleaning. Next, we have attachments. So here's where I'll be able to view any pictures or images that were submitted within the work order. But this is also where I can come and add, say, invoices that I want to be able to track and have a paper trail of later down the road. I can add an owner's manual. Maybe I know my technician's going to be working on a piece of equipment. I want him to reference something. Another pro tip for my multi-campus facilities, maybe you're the facility director of multi-site, or maybe you just have a very large building, it can be cumbersome to check on your guys, running back and forth all day checking on work orders. A big pro tip I'll do is have your guys, when they're done with the work, take a picture of it and add it to the work order. Approve it that way rather than having to run back and forth. That way you're capturing the information you need and you can approve of this virtually rather than running with your head cut off. So I know facility managers, we need to save as much time as we can. So I really like that piece of it too. And there's some, let's be honest, there's some things you can't just take a picture of to make sure it's okay. Sometimes you really got to go there to check. But if you can do it this way, it will save you some time. Then we have the history, and I just created this before our call today. So as you can see here, except my name isn't Lori, but I can come in and I can see everything associated with the work order here time-wise. So when was it created? What was added or taken away throughout the process? When did we actually start working on it? When did we stop working on it? When did we complete the work? When was it approved? I'm going to see all of those items here, exactly who's done what and timestamps of every time that action took place. So I really like that too. Now forms. I usually leave this out, but I'm going to cover this because this could be very valuable for some people, especially if you want to gather more information. Now, if you are texting or emailing in work orders, the forms are hard to utilize. Yeah, I said that right. So just be kind of cautious of that, but this is where I can again tie a form to a specific service category, and it's going to create new questions or new information or new fields that need to be filled out. In this case, this was just after hours emergency only. I'm just acknowledging that message, and that was it. However, you can also, maybe for your IT, you can ask the question to say, have you tried turning it on and back off? You could ask things like that if you want to, but any custom questions related to that service category, you can formulate in forms and make that required to be filled out upon requesting it, unless it was texted or emailed, because obviously they won't see the form pop up there. Last thing is, if you are using the event scheduler, I do love item closures where I can actually create a closure for a work order. So a closure in the event scheduler, if you use both, a closure is when we shut off a room or a resource for a particular reason. So let's say we're mopping here. It's going to be a big, long mop, or we're going to be pulling up carpets. We're going to be painting. We're going to be doing something like that, right? It's going to take time. I want to make sure nobody books an event in this room during that time. I can come and create a closure here. Maybe it's going to be all day. Maybe it's just for a certain period of time. And then I'll actually come and choose the rooms that need to be closed off. And look at that. It's showing me the affected events that are going to be affected because I'm making this closure. So not only am I closing off for events that haven't been booked yet, so it shows up as a conflict, but it's going to even show me events that have been booked, and I could actually cancel them once I press save here. It's going to prompt me to send a cancellation email to this event. I'm not going to do that, but as a facility manager, I have that power. If we have a facility emergency and we need to cancel events, we can simply do that here too, which is really, really cool and a huge benefit if you use both the event scheduler and the work order tool. Okay, so my throat is getting dry. I'm going to drink some coffee. Do you all have any questions within a work order so far? I'm going to cover preventative maintenance, assets, and inventory still. That'll go much quicker. I usually spend most of my time on that first pillar being the work orders. But please feel welcome, drop in Q&A or chat box any questions you have so far. Let's see. eSPACE request, we don't accept side conversation request. Rob, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you elaborate just a little bit? Felix, how can forms be used outside of eSPACE? Are you referring to the public request form where I kind of showed you how folks can request the event without a login? Mark, what format does the vendor get notified in? If they have a work order program, could that be imported in their system? It will not be imported in their system. They will be notified in an email format. Now, if they are opting to use eSPACE, there will be a link in that email where they could actually log in and add that information. Can forms be used outside of eSPACE? The forms created in eSPACE, can they be used outside of eSPACE? So the forms created in eSPACE, I assume you're referring to like this one we had here, the public work order request form. And this can certainly be used outside of eSPACE. This is meant for public requests. So anybody that you don't need a login to access this. So anybody with this link can now submit a work order, if that was what you were asking. Form builder forms, gotcha. So what happens, Felix, when I go through the work order request form, if I choose the service category that form is required for, that form will actually show up for me. Let's see if I can replicate it really quick. It's gonna make me choose location. I think this has a form. So once I choose the service category here, it's now prompting me to fill out the form that I associated with housekeeping and janitorial, if that makes sense. Rob, let me look into yours again real quick. I love it. Yep, we don't accept those anymore either. Once you have eSPACE, the goal is you have no excuse to get it in. We have all these different ways for you to get in the system. Got to utilize it. Awesome. Everybody feeling good so far? Is this helpful? Is there anything else that you're hoping to see I'm missing so far in the work orders? Give me a thumbs up or a yes, sir, or something along those lines. Let me know you're still with me. Mark raised his hand. I'll take that as a yes. I like it. Totally makes sense, Felix. I like the texting option. I really do. The texting option is really powerful. I think that is a really great way to be able to make it easy for folks to get it in the system. I will have folks save the email in their contacts. So it says facilities at your church in their contacts. So they don't even have to remember the email. They can literally just go in their contacts, press it, and text it in. I think that is a really powerful way to do that if they don't have access to computers, assuming they do have access to their phone. So again, I make some assumptions there, but I really love while you're not collecting as much information as you can, you're making it as easy as possible. So I really love that approach to it. Thank you all so much for the feedback. I'm really glad this is valuable for you guys. And you all are an awesome audience. Let me go ahead and jump into preventive maintenance here, and we'll talk about this a little bit. And when I mean a little bit, like this will be really short, because we already covered the main things, the main components of a work order. Now, what's the difference of preventative maintenance to a work order? Does anybody know? I hope my facility managers do. This is where you guys say something. Come on, you're leaving me hanging. This is supposed to be fun, back and forth. Well, that's okay. Okay, so there we go. That's right. Plan versus reactive. Nailed it on the head, Felix. Keeps things alive and running. That is a really, really good definition of it. So yes, in essence, preventative maintenance are those recurring things we need to do. Really, in our system, we just view it as similar to a recurring work order. So again, the same items we just filled out here. What's the location? What's the service category? What's the description of the work being done? What room is it in or rooms? What asset is going to be tied to it? Again, so we can report on that later. What tasks need to be done with that, if any? Who's it going to? any attachments, but boom, once we get to the bottom here, it gets a little different. How often does this happen? Is this a one-time thing? Is it daily? Is it weekly? What is the frequency of this? And maybe it doesn't really check any of these boxes, and we just need to come and choose custom and grab a bunch of dates that we know that work needs to get done on. So we got our dates here. They're all over the place. Perfect. And then I choose how many days prior do I want to generate the work order to my team. Well, this is when the work is due, but when do we want to generate the work? When do we want to get it in everybody's queue? Maybe 3 days in advance, maybe 5. We'll go ahead and do 3 here, and even let you know here 3 days prior, which I really like. Then we got the bottom section. So who needs to get reminded about this? Not who's it getting assigned to. They're already going to get emails and all that good stuff, but does anybody else need to be reminded about it? Maybe you're the admin or the facility director and you're leaning on one of your guys to really get it done. Maybe, excuse me, you just need to send a reminder to yourself as well to check on that. Or maybe you're assigning it to a vendor to change your filters. This was one I heard this week. Maybe you're assigning a preventative maintenance task to your vendor to change the filters, and he's been periodically late, or he just doesn't show up sometimes. Maybe I'm going to send a reminder to myself to manage him until we really get him back on track of showing up when he needs to. And again, that's just very, very helpful. You can assign it to him automatically every 3 months, but sometimes that phone call for certain vendors just makes a big difference. So I do like that piece of it as well. Something really good our developers thought about when they built this. And literally, it was that quick and easy. That's a PM. That's preventative maintenance. Harmless, right? We're really trucking along now. That's 2 out of 4 pillars. And the next 2 are going to go very quick also. Now we have equipment or the assets that we're tracking. These are our high ticket items. Ideally, I like to think this of anything above $500. Some people do more, some people do less. It just depends what you want to track. I would at least do the core things, your HVAC units, vehicles, things like that. I also know people who do their roofs on here. Maybe you want to report how many times did we look at the roof last year? What was the result of those things? When was the last time we did a repair, whatever it may be? You may want to track your parking lot, your asphalt. Maybe we want to track that as well, just to be able to, again, see when have we worked on it? What have been those processes? We can see all that information. I'll show you how this ties into our life cycle calculator in a second too, so we can track remaining useful life, depreciation, replacement cost and value, all that good stuff. But all to say, you can get very creative in what you track for equipment. I even know a lot of churches that use it for IT will track computers, all of their AV equipment, everything they have, they will track here. Appliances, mowers, landscaping equipment, you name it, all of that good stuff. But let's go ahead and take a little deep dive here. So this is one of my rooftop units. This is a Carrier unit. If you use Carrier, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. They're not bad. But I can come in, I can track a bunch of different items here, like the description of what it is, what campus or location is it at, what is the model number, serial number, date and service, our warranty expiration for parts and labor. I added cost here. This is a user-defined field. I'll show you that in a second. That's another big pro tip. What images do we tie to it? So again, for scalability, how do we know which unit it is? You may know as a facility manager for so long, but how does your team know? How can we track this just in case something would ever happen? We have this in some place anybody could access and understand. We have an owner's manual we can attach to it. So this could also be like warranty information. Anything you want to attach and associate to the asset you can as well. I even tie inventory to it. So I know what filters I need for this particular unit based on divided inventory group types, but you can divide that up however you want. Then we have the equipment history, and my dates are flip-flopped right now, and I'll typically run a report to gather this information, but there's one column in the far right a lot of people miss that I like to pay attention to, and that is PM question mark. That does not stand for property manager. That stands for preventative maintenance. Was this scheduled maintenance, or was this a find it, fix it problem? And again, we're not in 2016 anymore, but I could see that we had a month span here where I had 3 issues that was not scheduled maintenance. So these were find it, fix it problems. What is that telling me? Do I need to sit down and have a conversation with my contractor? Maybe he's not servicing things properly. What's actually going on here? Maybe this unit's reaching the end of its life cycle and I need to look into that a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll waltz over to my life cycle calculator here. PS, if you don't use this, this is totally free, whether you're using eSPACE or not, totally free. I can go to my modules lifecycle calculator and I'll find, okay, how much remaining useful life did it have? So I don't know if this carrier unit's, it is here. It's supposed to have 3 more years. Oh no, maybe it's reaching the end of its life cycle sooner than we thought. So we're gonna have to think about that one. We wanna look into that a little further and make sure we have the reserves just in case something would happen. And what is the current replacement value? So it's gonna show me all these things, but the capital or the life cycle calculator, as you see, you can also divide in capital groups, which I can then see a summary of here. So how much money do I need to save each year for HVAC replacement? What is the summary of all those items going to be? How much we have saved up in the grand total of things? So this is really, really cool too. I'm also able to view the items here, again, in a little quicker and easier view. I can see what was generated from the work order tab, because you don't need the work order management to have this awesome tool. This is just a nice way to complement it even further, and your finance folks will thank you. But I can easily just press a button, sync all my equipment or assets over from work order management, which is WOMS. Now you're learning our lingo. We use WOMS for work order and asset management. It's just fun to say. So we'll sync the equipment or assets over from WOMS and bring it directly into our lifecycle calculator now. We could also import data here from Excel if we want. So I'll download my template file and do it that way. So it's totally up to you. We just really think every church needs to have this tool one way or another. Another thing of what we do too, I don't want to get too into the weeds with this, but we also offer facility condition assessments where we will actually fly out to a church. We help them with deferred maintenance. We help them with a fresh eyes perspective, operationing or operational benchmarking cost, all of that good stuff. And then we actually plug their major assets into the life cycle calculator for them with our research and data. That could be very, very helpful for some folks. So if you'd like to learn more about that, drop me an email later, lee@smartchurchsolutions.com. I'd be happy to help. I'm sure most of you have my email by now and probably are aware of that, but just have to share that too. We have a lot of churches that want that assessment just to be able to fill this out. So it's pretty cool. Then we also can see depreciation and everything else like that. So again, we're not here to see the numbers. We're here to see the facility management stuff. So I'm going to jump back over to the work order piece. Another thing we did, I'm sorry, man, I just contradicted myself, but we also just added this cash flow feature. If you get our blog or newsletter, you got an email about this. This is really exciting for us. This is a really cool way to watch your anticipated available funds if you do save that, what the ending balance may be, any return, all that good stuff. So again, not going to go into too much detail about that today. Last piece, ooh, I almost skipped my pro tip I was going to share with you all. So one of the nice things about equipment or assets here, again, I touched on where cost was a user-defined field I built. Maybe I wanted to track cost here rather than the life cycle calculator. Who knows? I just really did it for an example. I like the life cycle calculator better, but this is a great example where I can make any field I want, again, based to service category. There's that magical word again, service category. So for HVAC, maybe I want to track tonnage. I can track the tonnage for HVAC as a user-defined field, but that's not going to show up on my IT equipment. It's not going to show up on anything else like that. It just shows up for HVAC. So maybe if you are tracking like IT equipment, you want to know the processor, the storage capacity, the RAM, all those fancy words that get beyond my head. Maybe you want to track those things here. You can certainly do that, but you'll never see it show up on an HVAC unit because it is specific to the service category. Set that up, you go to Settings, Advanced, User-Defined Fields. And another nice thing is you can make the user-defined fields in the work order too, again, specific to the service category. So pretty awesome. But again, you could see here, like I have HVAC filter size under my HVAC stuff. So I can fill that in for HVAC units if I want, rather than tying a specific piece of inventory to it. Last we have is our inventory. And I primarily use the method I showed you all earlier. I love the idea where, okay, if you track the cost of the inventory here, you don't have to do inventory because it does it for you. It'll tell you when to order more. I love that. That's a time saver. Let you do inventory on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. Everybody's different. You don't need to look at this if you do that and you do it well. If you don't do it well, things fall through the cracks. I know they always do, so that's fair. But I can come and view the inventory, see our quantity in hand, and all of those great things. I can also adjust the inventory through an Excel spreadsheet. So if I ever need to adjust the items, I can certainly do that here as well. Where are you? Current inventory. There we go. So I'd be able to adjust them here. Now, one of the things I talked about later or earlier, that reorder threshold. Did you all know you can edit the inventory and create the reorder threshold? Where are you? Look at me stumbling around. Maybe I need to be here. There we go. So I'm under inventory items. I edit it. And this is where I can add that reorder threshold. So it's letting me know when I get to 4 or below, I'm getting an email letting me know to order more. But Lee, I have a reorder threshold set. I still don't get emails. Another thing you need to do is set up system alerts. And this is awesome. So system alerts, set up system alerts. I need to enable inventory reorder if it is not enabled already. This is really awesome. Some other things you'll see here as you wander on this page is I'll be able to see, do I want to get emails about work order not accepted? Do I want to be emailed about upcoming work orders that are due in 1 day, 2 days, to stay on track of this stuff? So if anything does fall through the cracks, I get notified about it, increase my productivity. Work orders past due. Maybe I, as the admin, I don't want to have to check on my team every day, but if something's past due, I want to be known about it. I want to be known about it. That's really good English, Lee. I want to be aware of that going on. So maybe after 3 days after the due date, I want to know what's going on. I need to be aware of it. If I need to step in, I will. And if they're not closed by the admin, if I'm not approving them, checking them off, and closing them after they're complete, maybe I need a reminder too. So we can set these system alerts and reminders up to keep us all notified of these things going on. All right. Is anybody drinking from a fire hose, or was this just a big review for you all? Didn't learn much, not learning anything. Tell me how you guys are feeling. What was something you didn't know that I went over today? I would love to hear that. That would be awesome. And as of right now, I'm getting close to being done. Please feel free to shoot over questions too in that chat box. I'll try to get at what I can in these last 12 minutes here. Thanks, Cameron, Felix, Sheila. Thank you very much. Good, Scott. Good. Awesome. I'm glad, Anita. Great, Tori. And thank you all so much for sharing your feedback, by the way. Great, Chris. Oh, we got a question about external vendors. Lee, would you show your service category list? Yes, absolutely, Marty. Give me 1 second. Yes, Felix, you absolutely can. I'll show you that in just a second as well. Great question. I don't want to miss anybody. Pam, as of right now, I will have to look at our roadmap to determine when external vendors will get alerts on their phone. I am not sure if we will set that up because there is a cost to send text to people who aren't opted in. So there would be some complexity there, but I think it still may be possible. And it would also need to distinguish between cell and a home phone number, but please feel free to email me offline. I can see if our developments have something like that on our roadmap to check into. Now, okay, I'm going to start with Marty and Felix. So Felix asked, is it possible to set up a weekly PM for cleaning? Absolutely. What I would do is I will set my PM here, and I would have it for a service category for housekeeping, cleaning. Again, those are user defined by you. You have those as you want. And I will, maybe it's just going to be, cleaning checklist or whatever this may be. Then what I'll do is I'll add all the tasks that need to be done for cleaning, Felix, in this task list here. And if I have a task library like the groups I showed you, I could press 1 click, add all the cleaning tasks here if I wanted. But what I'll do is, I could list out all the tasks. So it could be clean windows, dust everything, wipe down surfaces, sweep, mop. All of those items could be included here. You could even specify in these tasks exactly what chemicals to use, how to do it, and all of those things. So that's how I would accomplish that. Marty, glad you're here. Let me go over to my service categories, give you a peek. So I will be honest with you, I have more here than is really necessary. And I'll tell you why. Like cable and internet, it's a little too specific. The way I like to think of service categories is how am I going to narrow down my user permissions? Because again, knowing everything flows from service category, we kind of want to reconstruct it. So, I can have user defined fields based on service category for my assets I'm tracking. So unless I have cable and internet assets that I need to track something different on, and maybe if I have a specific person that just does cable and internet, I'll keep that here. But a lot of that time, that may not be the case. And some people take a different approach than me, but I like to think about the functionality of it, not just having service categories to have them. Because at the end of the day, if somebody goes through a form and they're filling out this information, they're going to have to pick through service categories. So I want to make it easy to select from. And for instance, for me, I have one for my texting that I do. I have one called public work order request because it's just a general request. I need my facility manager to identify the service category before passing it on to the appropriate person. So he will define that any facility related service category he can select from to reassign that or to change that service category, which then will pipe to choosing the appropriate person to get the job done, right? Or the appropriate department or the appropriate vendor. So again, I think of that in terms too, how can we automate it where he can say, okay, this is a lighting issue. And now literally only he can choose from people who can do lighting stuff or electrical work, whatever that may be. But I think the big ones for me, I think I love fleet. Where are you? I'll start here. HVAC, obviously. If you're using communications, graphic design's a big one. Fleet service and repair. I have user-defined fields for my vehicles, so I can track mileage. I can track all that good stuff. So I like having that. Elevator maintenance and repair, that could be handy. So it only goes to your elevator guy. Building resources and management. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe just facility services would do. But hopefully this is helpful, just giving you a broad idea. But really, it does take a little bit of brainstorming, trying to figure out, what's going to be most intentional to use moving forward. Yep. Let's see if there's any other questions. Service category list, great refresher and awareness. Awesome. Yep, awesome. So glad you guys got more of it. So here's a couple other items. I know some people are logging off. We're gonna get into the good stuff now that they're getting out of here. Those suckers. I'm just kidding. A couple other things I like to hit on though. I have too much fun on these if you guys can't tell. But some of the things I really like to do is we can think about what reports we want to run, right? So what data is important to you? What do you want to see? And you can build it in the report builder, pretty much anything you want. I think this is super powerful, but what I really like to do is I'll schedule them. And I tell a lot of people this that I do in my demos and everything like that, but a great refresher, something we developed earlier last year, is you can schedule your reports. Maybe you're too busy to run it every week, every month, every quarter. I'm going to schedule it to come to my email on a recurring basis. So I'm going to say, I need to see this email every month on the 1st at 3 p.m. Once I save that report and schedule it, it's going to literally deliver itself to my email every month of the 1st. Because reporting is so important, it is very easy to get lost. It's one of those things where it's not urgent, but it's very important. It's not something you're slapped in the face with reminded every day, but if you can set those reminders coming to you to look at those reports and to gather that data every month or on a recurring basis, I think it could be very, very powerful for how you manage and steward your facility. Again, because you don't just wake up and you're like, I want to run a report. It's like, no, I need to change this light bulb. I need to get this person, this staffing problem. I need to change this. The life is never ending. There's always going to be urgent things in front of you. How can we get the important things in front of you too? This is a really awesome way to do that. And that could also be done with our analytics. I really like that piece of it as well. And my data in here is horrible. And my facility managers, my people who are higher than me, you would fire me if this was real data. So please don't pay attention to this. But average time to complete a work order is 16 days and 3 hours. Somebody give me a high five. No, that's horrible. But these analytics too, I can schedule, maybe I need to see this on a recurring basis. I just want to review it every month just to see how Johnny's doing. Or I need to review it every month to see, what technician's getting the most done. I want to keep encouraging them to do a great job. Or what service categories are the most popular this past month? Are there recurring problems we need to be aware of? So there's things like that too. Let me go back in the chat here. Can we get a copy of this training? Sheila, absolutely. I'm going to send a copy of this to everybody. Vicky, please reach out to any questions you have. You can reach out to me or support@smartchurchsolutions.com. We're more than happy to help. I'll also show you where you can get to the support directly in the app. Let me see if I can. Does a report exist that indicates how often a particular employee is late with work orders? Ooh, that's a good one. Hold on. Let me get through all these. This thing scrolls really awkwardly, so I have to try and be very, very sensitive. Great. Yes, me too. Great point, Anita. That she just brought up something awesome. Whenever you create a user-defined field, you can report on it too. So that's another thing, Felix, is I can come and see the report. If I do want to track anything like that, I can, but I will typically run a time report to get that, to see how often things are late. This will typically give you the information you need to see how things are and who's getting what done, how late they are. However, the system, one of the things about the system that I think is important to remember is somebody can close out a work order hours after they actually did it, because the life of a facility manager, you do get pulled left and right pretty often. So whenever they say they got the work done, that's what they say whenever they click that button, right? So they actually get to say how long they think it took. But obviously, if it got closed out 3 days after the requested completion date, it's probably late. So the work order time report would get you close, but there's just some factors that are going to be a little difficult to track because it is based off of when the date is being recorded or when they say it was. So something to keep in mind when you're going through that as well. Great. Thank you all so much for staying and hanging out. This has been a lot of fun. I hear that, Anita. She's great. That's a great point, Pam. Yep. Work orders on hold. You're right. That's another outlier important, that is very important to measure. It's kind of difficult now, but I think that's something we're actually planning on working on, is trying to track more backlog and what's on hold. But the analytics is pretty sweet, where I can come here and I could also see who's getting the most done. So by technician, so, Lori, look at her. If you all don't know Lori, she's awesome. She is our lead support person here, and we just love her. And look at her, she's getting the most work orders done too. So big kudos. And then I also like work orders by day of the week, because if you have part-time staff or volunteers, this is an awesome way to see, wow, Tuesday is a big day for us. We create the most work on a Tuesday. So I want to be able to be here on Tuesdays, or have my part-time staff here on Tuesdays to get some stuff knocked out. And we're reaching the end of our time here, everybody. I want to be respectful of everybody who's joined. You guys sat through a full hour of me just talking and showing software. So big clap to you all for hanging in there with me. And thank you guys so much for joining. I hope this was beneficial. I will do my best to get the recording to everybody after the session. If you did not already receive an automatic copy from Zoom, maybe in an hour or so, you should. I will still try and get that out to everybody. If you have any questions after this, please feel welcome to email support@smartchurchsolutions.com. If there's anything I can help with personally as well, I'm more than happy. So please email me directly as well. That is Lee, Lee, @smartchurchsolutions.com. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and have an excellent weekend.